Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Schwinn and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
Awesome. All right. We've got an awesome trade show themed podcast today. So it's show season and everyone's going to be traveling soon. And some people get excited by it. Some people get burned out by it. We're going to talk the good, the bad, the ugly, how you can get the most out of your brand, or if you're a company selling to brands or a retailer going to the trade show, and how you can maximize your impact when you're there and really drive some business results and build great lasting relationships after you leave the trade show. So we've got some great things to talk about, and James is live on location from eTail West. So hopefully his audio works today. If it doesn't, you can blame his hotel. We'll blame the Marriott or wherever he's staying.
Yeah, we are on location. I'm sunburned by the end of this session here. I need those sunglasses from our Super Bowl episode to help me out. But beautiful weather here in Palm Springs. Really great first day at eTail West yesterday. So we're really excited.
Great. Yeah, I think.
And I'm assuming we got some lag maybe from audio.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of lag, but we'll make it work. So I think the first thing to talk about is, should your brand or company attend a trade show, and how do you go about figuring that out? Like, is it going to add value? Are you going to be able to pick up, new distribution, make some good relationships? If you're someone selling to brands, are you going to be able to find some prospects, set up meetings with them, hopefully end the trade show with a deal or some relationships that might end up in a deal in the future? So I'll talk about my experience, because I've been on both sides of it, from the brand side, going to a trade show as part of a big company with brands, as part of a small company with brands. And then on the other side, James and I were selling Amazon agency services to brands. And James is obviously at Quartile today. So we've sold 2 brands. So as far as trade shows go, like, my take is you got to make sure it matches up with your industry and that there's going to be impact there. So if you're a brand, it's going to be a trade show where, you're big enough for the buyers that are going to be there. If it's retail buyers, like, some people will go to Expo West, others will go to different grocery trade shows. You really got to make sure your brand's at a stage that you're ready for retail and that you'd be able to support it, because buyers are there, they're walking around. You never know what kind of conversation you're going to have or what the outcome could be. You really want to make sure you're ready for showtime. If you're a brand that's, $1 million in revenue and you're primarily D2C and you don't really know how to do brick and mortar yet, it might not be the best time for you to go to a trade show like an Expo West or an eTail or something like that. I think really it's, are you ready? Does your revenue justify the investment in a booth at the trade show and all the costs? Like, do you think you're going to get something out of it? And if something were to come of the trade show, a Fresh Time, a Whole Foods, a Target comes knocking, would you be able to support that? So for one, is just make sure you're ready for it. I think a lot of great relationships can happen from trade shows. We're very pro trade show, and I've been on all sides of it. I think from the selling side, make sure that it's a trade show that your prospects are going to be at and that they're going to be receptive to talking to you. We'll probably talk a little bit more about the prep that goes into it, which I think is incredibly important. But if you're planning on attending, there's kind of 2 philosophies. You can have a booth, which is great. If your target also has a booth, it might not be the best, because they're probably not walking around. They're probably manning their own booth. Or you can show up and just, start talking to people. You don't have to have a booth. You can just have a presence and do a lot of networking there, which I think is great. So really, you got to make sure that the conference is a fit for you, a fit for your brand. The retailers you want are going to be there. The relationships you want to build are going to be there. And if you're selling to brands, that it's within your ideal customer prospect and that your target market's there and that they're going to be receptive to have a conversation with you and your service while you're actually there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Sean. I think really being honest with yourself about what kind of state your brand is in. I think it's very easy to get excited and you see your competitors and the brands you've been benchmarking yourself against, like putting on this big show and big booth. I mean, it is a significant investment, both explicitly and implicitly. I mean, you're talking depending on the show, just for the booth itself, maybe 20 to, if you're a marquee sponsor, like upwards of 6 figures. You're talking about the travel time and expenses for your team going out, any product you have to bring there, the meals, like it is it would be a huge swing, and you hit a home run, or it could be a massive miss. So I think looking at, I think CFOs especially, we in e-commerce we talk a lot about attribution right now, and same thing with conferences. Not all these are order writing shows. You're not going to walk away with guaranteed POs and sales.
Yep.
You need to be understanding, like, this might be an awareness play. This might be an opportunity to nurture relationships with existing customers, with prospective customers that we've been talking to, or to just kind of break in and learn a little bit about the industry, maybe get on the radar of target accounts that you've been trying to pursue, but just haven't broken through traditional channels like cold calling, emailing, or LinkedIn, because everyone is doing that and you're just another red circle in a sea of red circles. So I think going in, the way I've always tried to do it, Sean, and we've done this where we had a booth attended to talk. So I see my screen timing out there a little bit there, so hopefully I'm still patching in. But I think the big thing is, if you get in a day earlier too, try to line up some things offsite, whether it be existing customers, contacts, get a breakfast, get a lunch, go grab coffee. At the show, have a plan of accounts. Don't just go wandering to every booth. Know who's mission critical for you to talk to. Once you've met with each of them, then go wander and explore, because otherwise you're going to feel busy, but you ultimately won't be productive because you got caught in the shock and awe of everything, the sensory overload that is these conferences with tens of thousands of people sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you hit on a good point too. Like, you might not get immediate POs coming from the show. And if you sponsor a booth, it could be 20,000 upwards to $100,000. I think for small founder led brands, especially, it may not always be the right decision to go to a trade show. You might not be big time enough yet, especially if you raised a friends and family round or maybe even a seed round. Let's say you raise a few $100,000, under $1 million. Do you really want to go spend 50,000 of that on a trade show if you're not quite ready for prime time yet? I would say that those dollars are much better suited being put into early advertising, product development, inventory, until you get to the time where that investment makes sense. If you are there, I think it's great. And like James said, like, have a plan. That's the number one thing when going to trade shows. Have a plan, because it's stressful. You're on your feet all day. You can easily burn yourself out and get overwhelmed if you don't have a solid plan. I've been there before. You come back to the hotel, you're completely drained, and you're like, what did I accomplish? What the heck did I do? Like, I feel like I didn't get any wins. It's probably because when I was younger, I just didn't have a plan going there. And I just hoped that I would walk around and make it work.
Yeah, and I think just some very practical steps. Again, whether you're a vendor or on the brand side, is any list and speaker list is provided typically months in advance, sometimes weeks, depending on the conference. But you have a very clear line. You can search on LinkedIn with the tag in terms of who's posting about going there, and then create a list in terms of create that list, get outreach going, and something personalized. It's a very relevant trigger. It's a reason for someone to talk to you or meet with you, even if they're not buying. Like, don't go in with this mindset of, I've got to get the deal like right now. This is your chance to build and foster a relationship, especially in a post-COVID world where anyone in outside sales capacity, where that's kind of stripped away from us. So really go in with like, hey, can I just focus on building a handful of relationships here? And if it comes back in 12 to 24 months, fantastic. If it doesn't, like, you represent yourself well, your brand well, your company well, it's going to open more doors that way versus just trying to like lasso everyone in there and just try to like crush a sale, which, again, we all want to be that. We all have our numbers to hit, but this is about relationship building more than anything else.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, James. I think the prep work leading up to it, consumer goods especially, is probably one of the largest, smallest industries I've ever been a part of. Like, people build relationships over decades. You work with somebody once, you may work with them again in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So invest in the relationships and be helpful when you can, add value when you can, because the world's small. People move around all the time. They move to retail, they move to agencies, they move to different brands. Like, you never know when you might cross paths with somebody again. So put in the work, the network. I think the number one tip I would say is reiterate is what James said. When you're going to a trade show, the month and a half leading up to it, go to the website, download the exhibitor list, understand who's attending, start building a list of the people you think might be there, whether they're in sales roles, founders, etc., or if they're retailers, the buyers, and start doing cold outreach on LinkedIn. If you have a good CRM campaign and you've got their emails, start reaching out via email. Try to set up coffees, try to set up lunch. If they have a booth, see if you can meet them at a specific time, because oftentimes I'll find brands that have booths will be meeting with their existing customers or buyers or partners, so their day might be completely scheduled out. So if you think you're going to just show up to a brand's booth and pitch or
Not
have
happening.
a sales conversation, it's not happening. Like, the key decision maker or the person you want to meet with probably off in a little side room, off in a little side table, already having pre-planned meetings for most of the day, and likely their coffee, their lunch, their dinners were already booked a few weeks in advance because they're trying to make the most of the trade show as well. So the more legwork you can put in going to the trade show, even if it doesn't result in an immediate sale or immediate PO or an immediate new customer, I can guarantee you that if you put in the legwork, the payoff will happen at some point in the next 12 months after the show. If you don't put in the legwork, you're probably just going to be roaming the halls, feeling burnt out and wondering why nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah, no, and I think on the other side, for like cash outlay, your clients attending, who are your
James, we might have
together
lost you.
resources on you?
I don't know if you can
Did
still
you lose
hear me.
me?
We
Am I
might have
back?
lost you. You were lagging a little bit. I think you're back now. If you
Am I
wanna
back?
hit on that,
Am I back? I'm back.
you're
All
back.
right. All right. So what I was saying is, for on the vendor side, if you're in that emerging category, you haven't tried the event before, and you try and pull together resources, look at who are your current clients and look at who are your vendors, and see, does it make sense for you guys to attend the conference together, and actually either do a joint booth or do like a joint dinner or happy hour together. Again, that way it's kind of a win-win scenario. You guys get to mitigate kind of the resource outlay for that. But also might appeal to a broader audience based on your vendor or client together. So I think look at ways to collaborate, especially if you haven't done the event before. Like, don't go in blind. It's great to have, I think, someone in the trenches with you
Yeah.
going that route.
Yeah, I
And
think having an accountability buddy or a partner at trade shows makes it a lot easier, because it can be overwhelming if you're just wandering around by yourself. And honestly, like, you feel pretty zapped at the end of the day. But having somebody that's kind of going through the same experience and shared chaos as you really makes it worthwhile. And
Yeah.
James, I think you hit a really good point, which is, don't just make it transactional about like, who am I trying to sell to or who do I want to buy from me. See if you can network with peers, because I think some of the best relationships I've built are with people that are in the same situation with me, whether it's also selling to brands. Maybe they have a good relationship or tip that they can make an introduction for you. If you're a brand, talking to other founders, because you might learn something that they're doing that you can reapply in your business and vice versa. And you can kind of share the battle scars and the war stories. I think founders love to talk to other founders. People selling love to talk to other people that are selling, because you just have this kind of deep connection, because you're going through the shared struggle together. Everyone's dealing with the exact same thing. So don't make it just about who can I sell to or who can buy from me. Expand your network, because you never know. Again, in this industry, things will boomerang back, and you might work together down the road in 10 years, if not within the next 3 months or 12 months.
Yeah. So Sean, one of my least favorite sales adages is it's all about who you know. It's false. It's who knows you and what's their impression of you. It doesn't matter if you claim to know someone. It matters if they see your name come on their caller ID on their phone. Are they going to pick up that call? Are they going to be happy about seeing your name? Are they going to advocate for you? Are they going to refer you? You think about the path to purchase, even personally. If you don't know a partner or a company that you want to use on your own, like, before you even go to Google, you're probably going to ask like a peer, former coworker or colleague,
100%.
and go for that. So if you're building a good reputation for yourself and your company, that's going to pay dividends, and it's going to be a faster sales cycle for you. It's going to be there's going to be less friction during that process because it's coming from a trusted referral versus going in carte blanche and through a random Google search. I think the guard is up a lot more. So I think just always keep that in mind and make sure that you've got the long game, detaching from the outcome, which you and I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Long game in mind always, and just fostering that relationship.
Yeah, I'm a big fan now that I'm a dad of 5 or dad of 3. I'm a big fan of what I would call coach speak, which are just kind of ridiculous sayings that really do ring true when you think about them. So I think James and I really like the one which is commit to the process and detach from the outcome, which I think
Yeah.
whether you're selling your brand, whether you're selling 2 brands, like you really just got to commit to the process and know that if you put in the work, things are going to pan out. Maybe not always on your timeline, but if you put in the work, you're going to get the outcome at some point that you want, or build relationships that'll lead to a different outcome in the future.
Yeah. And Sean,
Yeah.
there's one thing I want to bring up that I think we doesn't get talked about a lot. Actually, we're talking about a lot of brands that are considering trade show participation. I actually had an interesting conversation yesterday here at eTail West, where there was a pretty established brand, and there's a trade show coming up in the spring, and they've done it for probably 15 years. However, it hasn't really been they've got massive brick and mortar distribution now, massive online presence, and it's almost they're doing it not out of nostalgia per se, but almost because it's like we've had such a presence here, we grew up here, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's not the payoff isn't there as much. So you're also seeing brands at the opposite end of the spectrum. They're like, do we need to do this to maintain optics? Because this worked for us 10 years ago, but really like
Yeah.
now we're a mature business. We don't really need this
Yeah.
anymore. So, I mean, you're at P&G. I'd be curious, like your take on, big CPG, like how do you think they approach those? Cause they're probably in
Oh
a
my
very similar boat.
oh my gosh, man. We did the dumbest things with trade shows. So when I started at Procter and Gamble, I was on the Iams pet food brand. And the brand was built at trade shows, right? Like pet trade shows, like different things, giving out samples, all that. But at some point, when you're in Walmart, you're in Target, you're in Kroger, like you already got the distribution. Like those trade shows probably aren't working as hard for you anymore, and you're the big incumbent. You're not the challenger brand anymore. And we would pay, a few $100,000 a year to sponsor booths to go to these trade shows, but nobody from our brand, besides maybe a salesperson or two, would go there. And then we would hire what we would call like the booth talent, which would usually just be like college age, you know, men and women who
Yep.
would just stand there and hand out samples, had no clue about the brand, didn't really care. They were just there to collect their payment for showing up for the day and wearing your brand T-shirt. I think that's almost like worse. Like nobody's coming to engage with your booth. Nobody cares. You're almost better off not being there because I think it leaves a negative impression of your brand. Because if somebody was curious and wanted to come up, they're talking to people that one don't really know what's going on, don't really care, and they know that you just mailed it in and you're not there to build community and build relationships. So I it's a double-edged sword because of the nostalgia and because of the willingness to want to support. But I think when you get to a certain point, if you're not going to participate and get value out of it or add value, just you're better off not even going. And that was my perspective for some of the larger brands.
Yeah. We don't need to. Not everything needs to be done for optics. I mean, I know we're in marketing and e-commerce, and a lot of it is about optics and maintaining certain appearances. However, it doesn't always make sense. So figure out how to innovate, iterate, and pursue other means for community development and business development.
Yeah, and
The one,
James, just like younger brands, like that, the spend might not make sense for them at that time because cash is limited. For bigger brands, the spend also probably doesn't make sense for you. Like go invest that money into advertising, working dollars, influencers, some other sort of campaign versus spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to have a booth at a trade show that nobody from your company really plans on attending or cares to attend.
yep. Uh, Now, Sean, I think the other component here is when you're dealing with different time zones. If we kind of take it away from like the company side and go a little bit on the personal side, right? Like maintaining your own personal rhythm and routine. So you and I are both based in Cincinnati, East Coast time. I'm here Pacific Standard Time. So like my natural clock, like I'm alert by 3:34 a.m. here. So very early start. You're going to the conference all day. There's dinners or happy hours, and then catching up with the team. And then you come back and you're like, oh, but my workload didn't stop. There's still a bunch of stuff that came in. So you're either doing work really late at night, early in the morning. So I think you really need to pace yourself. I mean, for me, maintaining fitness still and trying to eat as healthy as possible and make sure I have the right proper fuel. I'm hydrated. I've got caffeine, limiting the alcohol, making sure I am getting outside and taking breaks, because even though it's a big conference and very social, like you need to get outside and just kind of reset, and also take you can lose track of time, like checking at home. Step away. No one's gonna like roll their eyes if you step away for 15 minutes to FaceTime your kids or your spouse. So make sure you're doing that and not losing sight of what's important and kind of your true north while you're out here, because it is a insane blitz from a time and energy standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I'm probably terrible at that. Like I wake up at the same time. I'll usually go work out at a trade show, but when I'm there, I'm like, I forget to go outside. I forget to eat. I forget to call and check in with people. It's kind of like, it's like when you're in a Vegas casino, you're like, wait a minute, you blinked and what the heck happened? Like 8 hours has passed.
Yeah.
I probably also overindulge in the free alcohol at the events afterwards, which makes my next 3:30 a.m. wake up even more difficult. So avoid that if you can. I think the other big piece too is after you leave the trade show, you meet all these people, you make great connections, but most people drop the ball on the follow up and the follow through.
Yes.
So I think a couple simple tips that you can do, whether it's with your internal team to let them know why they sent you to the trade show and why it made sense, is write like a little 1-page recap of what happened at the trade show, connections you made, things that you learned that the team could benefit from. So I think it's great for internal visibility. It helps share some of the learning from the trade show with everybody else on your team. The other thing is when you get business cards, when you take people's emails, follow up with every single person that you talk to, even if there's not an immediate follow-up, just like, hey, it was great connecting. Let's stay in touch. If I can be helpful to you in any way, or if there's something you can send them that adds value. I think James always likes to talk about making deposits versus withdrawals. Like make those deposits with everybody you connected with at the trade show. Even if there's no immediate business need, you just never know when that relationship's going to boomerang back around. And if there was something immediate, follow up with it while you're on the plane, when you get home the next day, early the next week, because people immediately get out of the mindset of being in the trade show and being receptive to what they talked about once the rest of life happens, right? They get back into their normal family, work, life routine, and the trade show's long gone. Like they don't want to hear from you 2 weeks from now. You got to strike when you have those follow-ups and when they're hot.
Yeah, and for you salespeople, don't let your happy ears trick you. Here, you may have had a great conversation. That does that mean is a legitimate opportunity, or they're going to be signing a deal in a week or two. So again, you're going to have that kind of stage 5 clinger vibes if you're honing in real hot after these shows. So I think just be natural, right? Like follow up. If there's any key points that you hit on during the show, like follow up on that. If there's someone else that you met that's really interesting, that would be worth connecting that person to. Do that, facilitate that introduction, connect those dots. If there's something that an observation for their brand or an opportunity, like there are a multitude of ways for you to add value and add deposits. So I think, like Sean is saying, like be timely, be relevant, but be just relational and natural as well. Like from beginning in the prep work all the way through the follow up, because that is going to open the doors for longer term gains for you and that potential brand or retailer partner.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, any parting thoughts on trade shows, James? I think that's pretty much all I had. But I did have an interesting, if you don't have anything else, I have an interesting thing that I want to get your take on that is not trade show related, but
fire away.
Hit my desk this morning that I want to get your take on that I think the BrandBusters could have some fun with. So for those that don't know, I own a CPG holding and operating company. We buy e-commerce businesses, brands, run them. There's been a lot of aggregators, as they're called in the space, that rolled up Amazon brands. A lot of them were just products made in China, not necessarily brands. But one of the largest ones is a company called Thrasio. And this is probably the most creative bankruptcy announcement release I've ever seen in my life, James. Let me just read this to everybody here. So here's the title of the press release. Thrasio takes steps to financially strengthen its financial position. Great way to frame a bankruptcy. It initiates a prearranged Chapter 11 process with support from lenders to significantly reduce their debt and facilitate a comprehensive balance sheet restructuring. It's obtained commitment from existing stakeholders to provide $90 million in new financing for the exciting opportunities and times ahead. So I don't think I've ever heard a bankruptcy framed that way, and there's probably quite a bit of people who lended the company money that are losing out. But it seems like there's exciting times ahead, and it's an exciting restructure. I don't know. What's your take, James? That was the most creative announcement I've heard.
We have Lyft fat fingering their earnings report, and now we got this. I think they're trying to buy time. I mean, if that's not an outright declaration, I think it's uh, subliminally conveying that. So I think that gives them a little bit of runway and maybe paints a little bit of a rosier picture for lenders or whoever else. And maybe, I mean, I'll say like they've been very creative in the fact that they've been able to kind of maintain, whereas a lot of the aggregators went up in smoke very quickly, and they're probably one of the biggest and most complex. So I'll give them some credit. Again, we'll see if it's what's the inevitable, but yeah, not the not the most promising update though.
I thought it was interesting. I mean, it's the right thing for all these aggregators to do because most of them said they raised $1 billion in capital. Probably about 100 million of that was actual equity that they used to build the team. The rest was debt at 15 to 17% that they used to buy these businesses. So, buying 30 to 100 e-commerce businesses with 100% debt at 15% interest, no bueno, doesn't work out. Like, I don't care. You'd have to execute perfectly for that spreadsheet to pan out the way that you think it's going to. So it's the right move, but just funny way to frame it.
Well, if you think about these aggregators, I mean, the amount of entities that they rolled up so fast with varying P&Ls and like trying to syndicate, like that is a complete mess. Like, these like private sellers like did not have sound financials prior. So like untangling
everyone was
all
running
that.
QuickBooks, right? And they're trying to roll them all these up.
Yeah. So I mean, I give them credit. Like there's a lot of financial engineering to like take that in, especially I think they're at maybe over 200 acquisitions plus. I don't know the exact number, but so don't quote me. But I mean, that's just a beast. So I think fascinating to continue to see how this plays out, and the BrandBusters will be monitoring.
Yeah. So with that, I think we'll end. So I'll give one quick plug. James is obviously out there with his company Quartile, who sells retail media solutions, advertising solutions. If you need that, you should reach out to James directly. You can find him on LinkedIn. I own a company called Cincy Brands. We roll up e-commerce companies and brands. But one of the things we recently started is a 3PL focused specifically on e-commerce. So we do Shopify D2C fulfillment, TikTok shops drop shipping, and a ton of Amazon FBA prep, bagging, bundling, labeling. We ship out 1 million orders direct to consumer every single year and about 500,000 units into Amazon. So if you are struggling or have a need, I would love to connect with you. You'll get me directly. I lead our sales because I enjoy the relationship part. So if you have a need, reach out to James, reach out to me. You can find us on LinkedIn and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks again for tuning in and listening this week. Until next time.